Hi, I'm Nick Maselli. At TD Bank, we believe all citizens need to be informed about the important financial issues that affect their daily lives. That's why we're proud to support programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
Funding for the new Congress, U.S. Senators Menendez and Booker. A conversation with Steve Adubato at NJPAC has been provided by TD Bank, the New Jersey Education Association, New Jersey Natural Gas, proud to support education in our communities, Barnabas Health, Life is Better Healthy, MD Advantage Insurance Company of New Jersey, NJM, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, and more, with a focus on safety and financial stability. And by NJ Best, New Jersey's 529 college savings plan. Turn a dream into a degree.
Hi, I'm Rafael P. Roman. My colleague Steve Adubato recently had the opportunity to sit down for a two-part conversation with New Jersey's United States Senators Bob Menendez and Cory Booker. Here now is the second half of that conversation.
Let's pick up the conversation. At the end of the first segment, Senator, I wanted to give you a chance to follow up the point you wanted to say about the president. Go ahead.
Well, it's just this attitude that we as Americans have to take responsibility for the government that we have right now and understand when we play a role in that. And the point I was going to make about the president, which is a shocking point to me, when you have the president giving a State of the Union address, which is not just an address for America. Obviously, it's principally for that, but the eyes of the world, from China to Russia to India, are watching that speech. And you have an individual heckle the president. Instead of that person being sanctioned, censured, or what have you, the next day they turn around and raise a lot of money from the American public. They almost get rewarded for that bad behavior. The individuals that are often behaving badly are doing so because they get from the currency of politics, whether it's fundraising or popularity or what have you, that gets rewarded by us as folks. And so what I constantly say is that we've got to get engaged in our politics in a way that what we want from our political elected officials, working together, bringing people together, is what actually rewarded. And those people that are adding to that gridlock, adding to this idea that I'm not going to work with the president simply because he's a different party, or that I believe in a binary world, if he wins, I loses, which is not the idea of this great interdependent nation. And so our politics has to start to begin to evolve. In order to do that, to wait for just the politicians to do that, really divorces you from responsibility into creating that outcome.
I got a question on NJ.com on Common Core. How do you feel about Common Core and PARCC, P-A-R-C-C? How do you feel about these standardized tests?
Well, first of all, I think we've gone too far in one direction, which is this high-stakes testing that's being used in a punitive manner. It is, I think, from all the teachers I talk to, in many ways undermining their ability to give a well-rounded education, and we've got to find the right balance. And so to create an environment where the tests instill fear as opposed to helping to give feedback loops for accountability, we have to do better than that. And I think that many teachers and administrators now feel overly burdened by them and feel like they're spending a lot of time teaching to the test. And so in general, when it comes to this testing stake, we've got to figure out a better balance and to get back to the kind of holistic testing that makes, by the way, our country very unique, that we are a nation that focuses on things that give kids a whole well-rounded experience, so they're not just automatons, but they're inventors, they're innovators, they're artists, they're poets, and making a full contribution to our society.
Senator Menendez, let me ask you this from your perch. You understand this in a way that a lot of us don't. You interact with world leaders in a way that a lot of us cannot imagine. What do you say about the criticism of the president, that he is a weakened leader around this country? He is perceived to be a weak leader around this world, excuse me. And then when it comes to the issue of ISIS, dealing with ISIS, he has not nearly been strong enough. You say?
Well, look, I say that Barack Obama brought bin Laden to justice when others only talked about it. I say that, in fact, when Assad was using chemical weapons against his people, Barack Obama with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, passing on a bipartisan basis, where I took John McCain, one of the most hawkish members of the Senate, and Barbara Boxer, one of the most dovish members of the Senate, together to vote for an authorization for the use of military force to give the president the wherewithal, as he was headed at that time to the G20 summit, to convince Putin, Assad's benefactor, that, hey, either get rid of the chemical weapons or I'm going to use that authorization for the use of military force. And we ended up ending chemical weapons in
Has it been tough enough?
Syria. Look, you know, this thing about toughness.
Well, you know, when you draw the line in the sand thing, you know?
Well, the goal is not to be Rambo. The goal at the end of the day is to achieve your strategic interests, both in the national interest and security of the United States and those of your allies. Now, you know, I think that there have been moments of great success. There are other times in which, for example, in the committee, we have been more forward-leaning. We passed
more forward-leaning.
More forward-leaning, meaning that we were ready to take a step forward to arm the vetted Syrian rebels a year and a half ago, which now the administration promotes.
Should they have done it?
We led the way on sanctions on Iran, which brought Iran to the negotiating table. I authored those sanctions.
Why didn't the White House move faster on that?
Well, because, of course, you know, there is a role between the executive and the legislative branch, right? I mean, in the executive branch, he's also in the midst of creating alliances with other countries to get them to work with us in common cause. But sometimes the impetus that the legislative branch can create can assist the executive branch as they're dealing with global powers to say, my Congress, this is a democracy, is moving in this direction. I happen to share their views, but they may be moving a little ahead of me. At the end of the day, this is where we're going to be. And ultimately, to the president's credit, he worked in taking the sanctions that Congress passed and which he signed, and then creating a global coalition that moved forward to give it bite. So to give the president credit, at the end of the day, he has taken some of these steps significantly. Now, there's times, I believe that Congress, the United States Senate that we serve in, is a separate, co-equal branch of government. That means, you know, I support the president when we are in common cause, and when we have a different view, I will pursue my different view, because the ultimate people that I am responsible for is to the people of the state of New Jersey who elect me, and I'll make my case as to how I see things and why I voted certain ways and what positions I took.
Just get this, just on ISIS before we leave it. Complex issue. Hard to even figure out who they are, where they are at. You know, we're in New Jersey, what do we know? Do you believe the strategy that we understand the White House to be implementing to deal with ISIS is the best strategy?
It'll be an evolving strategy.
Should we have, quote, boots on the ground?
Well, the bottom line is, you know, I am neither a hawk nor a dove. In Afghanistan, I supported then President Bush, because that's where bin Laden and al-Qaeda, the perpetrators of September 11th, the reason we lost 700 New Jerseyans, the reason we lost 3,000 Americans, and I supported the use of force there. When it came to Iraq, I looked at the intelligence that was available to any member who took the time, and it came clear to me that there was no clear and present danger, no imminent threat, and no evidence of weapons of mass destruction, and I voted against it. Now, the question is not simply boots or no boots. The question is, if you can have the Iraqis, the Kurds, and moderate Syrian rebels be the ground forces to follow on the airstrikes, then that is a strategy, if in fact we can strengthen their abilities, that may very well work, which means that I don't have to send your son or daughter or my son and daughter to fight there when those who are in the midst of the challenge most immediately are willing to fight themselves. I'd rather test that first. And lastly, as it relates to ISIS itself, ISIS is a threat to the national interest and security of the United States. The reason that I am concerned about them, in addition to the barbarism that they have exhibited, is they don't yet have the operational capacity to create a September 11th-like attack. And what I want to ensure is that we strike at them in a way that doesn't ever let them get the operational capacity to create a September 11th-like attack.
Senator Booker, one of the audience members gave us a terrific question on the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. Negativity and general ugliness will probably begin in the new Congress, that's positive, around the Affordable Care Act. What will you, Senator Booker, and Senator Menendez can answer as well, do to preserve the law's integrity? And how will you help congressional supporters of the law stand their ground to keep improving health reform?
I don't want to go back to a time when people who are working hard every day, playing by the rules, have no pathway towards health insurance, and then often end up getting their health insurance in the most expensive way to taxpayers, which is the emergency room. And so there's been incredible innovations that we've been able to make under this bill that are worth protecting and preserving. And Senator Menendez and I, for one, are going to fight tenaciously against any attempts to move us back to an America where, frankly, when you poll Republicans on these issues, they don't want to go back there either.
Any changes at all you'd make to improve it?
There are absolutely changes.
Could you name one change?
Yeah, I'll name one that's very important for the state of New Jersey, which is the medical device tax. One of the ways some of the aspects of it are being paid for, a line is to tax medical devices. And for me, that is inhibiting a lot of New Jersey businesses and affecting a lot of New Jersey jobs. Nobody is saying that this can't be improved. If you look at a lot of the legislation that we have in this country, from Social Security to Medicaid, to the Constitution itself, they've been improved and involved over time, and this is something that needs to have happen. But let's not let the rhetoric and the blanket condemnation undermine the progress that we've made as a nation that we need to defend and not go back.
Senator, which part is the federal government responsible for? Which part is the state government responsible for? And how the heck do we improve this situation 2 years plus after?
Well, you know, Steve, this has been my singular mission since the last 2 years, from working at the time with the late Senator Lautenberg to get $60 billion for the region at a time in which we were talking about fiscal cliff at the end of a congressional session, just as we're having similar to right now, where the Congress ends and a new Congress begins.
Sure.
Trying to make that all happen under those set of circumstances was enormous. And succeeding in the Senate only to be stalled in the House for a while, but ultimately succeeding in getting the $60 billion. And then dealing with the realities of how do we expedite this money, but make sure we don't have fraud in the process, right? And so I was one of those who accepted giving the federal money largely to the state to make determinations on how, in fact, subject to certain reviews,
let the state do it.
Would, well, let the state be the vehicle which people would get their resources.
How'd that work?
It was a mixed bag, to be perfectly honest with you. Some of it worked well, and some of it did not. Our beaches are restored, our boardwalks are restored, but there are 10,800 families in New Jersey who still are suffering and still haven't gotten back into their home. Despite all of this money coming, there's only about 40% of them that have actually signed a REM program. That's the program that was established through the federal money by the state to help people out who didn't have enough coverage. Only about 30% of those ultimately have actually received any money, and less than 2,000 people have actually rebuilt their homes. So we still, as we are speaking in December, 2 years afterwards, have so many families out. So I've tried to streamline this working. I bought the Secretary of HUD before my committee, a subcommittee that I chair in the Banking Committee on Housing, to say, look, let's do these environmental and historical reviews up front, because the state was telling me, well, that's what's delaying it. So in the first year, in 2013, the state only did 450 reviews of these cases. As a result of my change in this year that we're in 2014, they did 8,000 reviews of the cases to move it forward. And by getting that review up front now, had we not had a state contractor that was chosen by the state that ultimately blew the program in the first year and was paid a lot of money and had to be fired, we might have been further along. So it's a mixed bag.
But you've worked closely with Governor Christie on this, no?
Yeah, we've worked in a way that is bipartisan, but that doesn't mean that when the feds were wrong in terms of, you know, what's the standard, or when the state is wrong in terms of how it's executing on the resources we're bringing, that we don't hesitate to raise a question. And the other part that we fought on is then the flood maps came. and the flood
Right.
maps were overly broad. And we succeeded on reducing the flood maps so that there were less zones that were legitimately a major flood area, because that meant how much flood insurance you had to pay. And finally, then we had the flood insurance issue, where we had rate shock. And that's the legislation I mentioned before that we passed. And Senator Booker came in at that time, was a big ally in our process, and now stopped the rate shock. And today, we got some tremendous news that we announced together by taking the FEMA administrator and saying, hey, it's unfair that insurance companies where people have paid 10, 20, 30 years lowball, purposely lowball the amount that they're going to give a policyholder, a homeowner in our state, and that, by the way, some of these insurance companies took engineering reports and had them redone so that they could either deny claims or lower claims. And today, we got the type of information released that will give all of those policyholders a fighting chance.
A few seconds on this before we leave Sandy.
New Jersey needs its 2 senators to work in lockstep and on things that benefit our state, and to divide where we can, and I want to use the word conquer, but to fight on these issues. And this is a great example that, and I want to give credit to our 2 senators across the river. He's not exaggerating when he talks about the lion's share.
You're talking about Schumer and Gillibrand?
Yes. The lion's share, a significant amount of our time is spent to deal with the thousands of families in New Jersey, thousands of people in New Jersey that are still affecting this. But this is a great example where he and I are our ability to continue offices. And I'll just give you another example, because he's being modest on our achievements of today. Just even this idea that FEMA can miss their deadlines, where residents are waiting for information, whatever. FEMA can miss, the government can screw up and miss their deadlines. But families, God forbid they miss it by 1 day, then they're being denied claims. And to us, that was outrageous. And so today was the day that we got FEMA to agree to reopen all these hundreds of families that have been denied under those just because they missed a deadline, many times waiting for information from the government to allow them to go forward. So this is a constant fight. And it's why you need senators that have such a good working relationship.
What is the role of the federal government in terms of dealing with income inequality? More specifically, what are the odds that the federal minimum wage will, in fact, be increased? The federal minimum wage right now is
$7.25.
And the proposal that is that it goes up to $10
over a period of time.
Okay. What are the odds that that happens, number one? And then what are the larger implications in terms of what is the role of the federal government to deal with income inequality?
Well, as you know, in New Jersey, because of the state's efforts, it's $8.25, and as a result of the constitutional vote that was taken, it'll be $8.35 or something.
What do you think it should be?
Look, something is wrong when you have mothers who work full-time and are below the poverty level. Something's fundamentally wrong with that. We want to reward work, right? The way you reward work is to make it such that it can pay. There's a problem when the top 1% in the nation had an 86% increase in their income over the last 20 years, and everybody else, the other 99%, ultimately had about a 7 or 8% increase over the same period of time. So the bottom line is, one is we have to continue to have a growing economy. And after 6 years of private sector job growth, the lowest unemployment we've had in 6 years, as we record this today, tremendous job numbers that came out today. But the reality is that middle-class families and working families see their income stagnant. So you have all these great macroeconomic indicators, but in their lives, they are still challenged. And so the question is, how do we, minimum wage is just one element of that.
Does the federal government actually have a role in trying to change that income inequality?
On federal, you look on that, it's a question of how do you create an economy that grows, that gets more people to work, including, the long-term unemployed, which we need to see drop.
Right.
It is also about how do you reward work through the tax code, and I sit on the Senate Finance Committee. How do you also reward creating opportunities for people to save and to be able to get their kid through school? When you graduate to college today under a mountain of debt, yet we need the most highly educated generation of Americans we've ever had to be globally competitive. The government has an interest in helping families meet that challenge because of our own economic imperative.
Senator, you've talked a great deal about student debt. Jump in.
Well, look, we're in this distraught present again, where our country used to lead on all these indices. From social mobility, we used to be the best country in the world to be born poor. We're no longer the best country in the world. If you want to make it from poverty to middle class, better to be born in England, in Canada, in Germany. All of these things are becoming stacked against middle class and poor families, just continue to go up and up and up. Our competitor nations are keeping the cost of college low. Germany, 4% of median income to go to college. Canada, about 6%. America, 52%, 51, 52% median income to go to college. And so when you see, and then you understand, and this is where again, I just really want to applaud Senator Menendez on the Finance Committee, especially because when you see the policies that are being pushed by some, you begin to scratch your head and say, why are we...
For example?
Let's take for this simple point. In America, it's unconscionable to me that New Jersey residents right now, there are many of them, who have skyrocketed student debt. I've done this in rooms with 30 and 40-year-olds who are still carrying college debt, and many of them are paying 5% interest, 7% interest, 9% interest, 11% interest, because you can refinance your car loan, your mortgage loan, but you can't refinance your college loan. And so you're stuck in this unconscionable interest rate given where the interest rates are right now. And so I just make simple thoughts. I have friends in businesses that because they're in a hedge fund or other business, they have something called carried interest, which means they pay a lower tax rate than their secretaries. That is what we call a tax expenditure. It is a way that we are trying to reward certain behavior. The idea there is that we're somehow incentivizing investment. Well,
what should the federal government do to change it?
Well, what I'm saying is what's going to drive our economy more in the long run? Shifting that tax break there to a federal government right now that makes billions of dollars off the backs of our students, because the student loan program, many Americans don't know this, is a profit center for the government. And so, to me, there's simple policy choices we have to make as a society, because I believe what's going to drive our economy further forward is not giving tax breaks like carried interest to certain portions of our population, but giving opportunities for people to refinance their loans and get educated, because the 21st century knowledge-based economy, what's going to drive our economy forward, what's going to make America great, is that. And right now, people don't realize this, we've fallen from the #1 country in the globe for college-educated people. Percentage of your population going to college, we used to be #1. Now and if you're over 50 in this country, you're part of that cohort. But now for 20-somethings and 30-somethings in America, we're about number 12 now. And so this is hurting our economy dramatically, because we're making financial policy decisions that are benefiting the wrong groups and not doing the things that will drive our economy. And by the way, poverty is a harsh, I would even call it a violent reality for many people, because it keeps them from being contributors. It keeps them on the sidelines. An example I'll give to this.
Couple minutes, go ahead.
I just took 4 kids to the movie theater from Newark, 5 kids to see Penguins of Madagascar. And I met their mother.
You sat through the whole thing.
I did. I met their mother at IHOP here in Newark, making the tipped wage dramatically lower than the $7.25. And I asked her, what does she do? She's working double shifts. She lives in the West Ward Mare. And she told me the salary she was earning, the dreams she had for her 3 boys. She was caught in this trap that the harder she works, she's not climbing out of that trap. And I asked her, what's her dream for herself? If she could get to college or to Essex County. She said, my dream is to be a social worker. Here's a woman that wanted to, in effect, help other people, but because she was in this trap where work does not pay, and so that's what we have to stop in this country, this madness, keeping our kids from going to college, from living above the poverty line, all of these things, and their policy issues.
And the federal government's role, in the time we have left, the federal government's role, real quick, yes or no? Should we tax those who you were saying are getting a special deal? Should we tax them at a higher rate?
So obviously, yes, on issues of
obviously yes.
Carried interest.
No. Wait. First of all, I don't have anything against wealth whatsoever. But there's a lot of places in the tax code that, he mentioned carried interest. He's right. Look, there's a whole bunch of others. Look, we give special breaks to the oil industry.
Shouldn't do that.
They make billions of dollars in profits. The marketplace has taken place over whatever the tax code should be. So I don't know if you use an offshore tax haven.
What, are you kidding me? How could you even ask me that?
It's public television. Neither do we. So the bottom line is, why don't we close the loopholes on offshore tax havens? Before we talk about anybody's individual rates, there are plenty places in the code to close and create prosperity.
And they want you to talk about it as a taxing the rich more. No, it's creating a fair tax code that works for us all. It's not about taxing one group more.
On that note,
loopholes.
I tried. I tried. On that note, I'm going to ask our live studio audience to say thank you to Senators Bob Menendez and Cory Booker. That was good, right? I got to do this. You ready? I do not have an offshore account, but we have partners. WNET, NJTV, our partners at New Jersey Advanced Media. Thank you again to John Schreiber and the folks at NJPAC and all the other folks, FiOS and everyone else who carried us. And by the way, thank you to all the underwriters. We have to thank those who fund us in public television. And I want to thank everyone who came here tonight to be a part of this very special broadcast. And finally, one more time, thank you to United States Senators Bob Menendez and Cory Booker. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone.
The preceding program has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation and NJTV in cooperation with 13 for WNET, WHYY, FiOS 1 News, and WBGO Jazz 88.3 FM. Funding for the new Congress, U.S. Senators Menendez and Booker, a conversation with Steve Adubato at NJPAC has been provided by TD Bank, the New Jersey Education Association, New Jersey Natural Gas, Barnabas Health, MD Advantage, NJM, and by NJ Best. Promotional support provided by The Record, North Jersey's trusted source, and NorthJersey.com, and by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association and its monthly magazine, New Jersey Business. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine.
When you work at a public school, you're a part of the community. So when Superstorm Sandy hit, the school employees jumped right in to help. The middle school here served as a refuge for people who were forced from their homes. We all pitched in to help. Custodians, cafeteria workers, teacher aides, mechanics, groundskeepers, all pitching in to help out. School employees are part of a team, whether it's to help educate our children or to recover from a terrible tragedy. That's why I'm so proud to be a member of the NJEA.